Ramaya Ramabhadraya Ramachandraya Vedase Raghunathaya Nathaya Sitaya Patiye Namaha. Sundara chapter number 47, the death of Aksha, the son of Ravana. The recitation begins now. Ravana listened to the news of his 5 renowned generals and the 7 sons of his ministers and their armies destroyed by a single monkey. He turned his eyes upon those that stood around him to decide whom he should send next. When his son Aksha lifted his head, all eager to give battle to Marathi and bring him alive. Thereat, Ravana signed to him to go. Aksha left the hall of audience. Famous among famous Rakshasa warriors, he shone with radiance even as a sacrificial fire fed with oblations by wise Brahmanas. He started on his mission brandishing aloft a lance inlaid with gold. He directed his huge car, fashioned of molten gold, to where Anjaneya sat. The car was a gift of hard-won tapas to Aksha, who rivaled in prowess the very gods on high. Its windows were wrought with fine gold. Flags, banners, and pennons decked with gems waved aloft over it. 8 steeds of the speed of thought bore it along gaily. Gods and asuras dared not bar his way. It moved of its own accord and needed no one to direct it. Like unto the blazing sun in its splendor, it held its course unchecked through the sky. Quivers, 8 swords, shaktis, tomaras, and other curious weapons graced its side in faultless array. Aksha cast his eyes proudly in his car, provisioned with every article of war, the bridles of the horses of the hue of the sun, the moon, yellow and white. It seemed to him as if a new sun dawned in the day. The earth and the heavens, the mountains and the seas trembled with the thud of horses, elephants, chariots, and others. And Aksha drew near Hanuman, who was eagerly watching to give battle to the next comer. The tawny-eyed Rakshasa met his foe, the son of Lord Vayu, blazing like the fire of destruction on the last day of the worlds. Said he to himself, "Wonder of wonders, this monkey, alone and unaided, has entered our capital, dealt destruction to all these armies of ours lightly, and now how listlessly it reclines over the gate." And he began to regard Marathi more closely and with increasing respect. Now Aksha was no fool or weakling. He noted carefully the huge stature, strength, and prowess of his opponent, as evidenced by his wonderful feats. He compared it with his own strength and valor. He was confident that he would get the better of him, and his fearful luster grew apace like the sun that had left behind him the dull bands of clouds. Then he resolved to give battle to Marathi. He knew full well that there was none who could stand before the valor of the monkey. So blazing in his wrath as he was, yet he held himself in restraint and proceeded on his task cautiously and calmly. He hit Anjaneya at first with 3 keen shafts. He found that they affected him not in the least. The monkey fought on as if nothing troubled him. It was bursting with pride and haughtiness as a certain victory that was to follow. Aksha said to himself, "Now have I found a foeman worthy of my steel." Right gladly did he grasp his bow and arrows, regarded his enemy very carefully, and drew near him again in all the glory of his garments, garlands, and bright earrings. Then there followed a battle between the two that turned the hearts of the Devas and Asuras to water, and it was not easy to find a parallel to it. The earth quaked in affright. The sun hid himself in abject terror. The air stood still. Huge mountains shook to their bases. The sky overhead was torn with an indescribable terror, and the seas were troubled to their depths. Aksha was a warrior of warriors. He was an adept in the art of aiming his arrows at impossible marks with frightful precision. He sent right at the head of Hanuman 3 arrows inlaid with gold banks, decked with gay feathers, sharp as needles, and like unto mighty serpents of cruel venom. The monkey hero was drenched in a moment with his own blood that flowed in torrents. He rolled his eyes frightfully in his anger. He grew red in face like unto the morning sun. The shafts stood out from his head like a radiant halo of glory. But joy and the fire of battle filled his heart when he beheld the very son of Ravana come to give him fight with bow and arrows and other frightful weapons upraised. The Lord of Day enthroned on the heights of Mount Mandara at mid-noon in the northern half of the year, and burned to cinders the creatures upon the luckless earth, shone not more intensely than Hanuman in the full plenitude of strength, valor, and wrath. The sparks that flew from his eyes burnt as it were nothing the cars and troops of Aksha. But the Rakshasa glowed with his bow as if he was a huge cloud bank irradiated with a rainbow. He poured a ceaseless torrent of arrows at the rock which Hanuman resembled. Now Maruti was no eaglet, essaying its first flight. Like unto a huge storm was his valor and might. He noticed that Aksha was unshaken in fight and utterly confident, and that his valor and luster grew every moment. He roared with joy at the prospect of the terrible fight that was to follow. Like unto deep ruined wells in the woods, entirely hid under the grass that grew over it, luring mad elephants to destruction in their depths, Aksha was bursting with the pride of youth. He owned no equal to him in fight. His eyes grew redder with wrath, and he closed with Manjaneya. He hid him under a cloud of arrows, but Maruti roared like a cloud at him. He slapped his shoulders and thighs frightfully and sprang into the air. Immediately the Rakshasa followed him even there with his car and covered him with arrows, even as a rain cloud emptying its contents upon a huge mountain. Maruti, of the speed of thought, was ready for it. His wrath grew, and he lightly evaded them, and like the wind, he coursed through the sky in the narrow interstices of the shafts. He observed that Aksha bent his mighty bow and hid the sky from view. Through his arrows discharged with terrible energy. He gave him his meed of praise and said to himself, "Now let me think out a plan to defeat this foe who fights so cleverly and so skillfully." Then the Rakshasa pierced him deep between the shoulders, and it drew a thunderous roar from him. A past master in the mysteries of war and fight, he bestowed some thought on the youth and his valor. This night ranger, shining in his splendor even as the morning sun, seems to me of no mean prowess. A youth in years, yet he lays to his record wonderful feats that grown veterans dare not dream of. There is not one kind of fight he knows not, and he applies them right well. Verily, it goes against my heart to slay this poor boy. Most courageous and confident, his valor is something to be remembered. The very gods and the great sages cannot fail to admire this Raksasa's mastery of the art of war. Now his spirit and energy grow apace. No tremor clouds his heart as he faces me most boldly and invites me to mortal combat. My radiance dims not his keen eyes. The hearts of the gods and asuras cannot but tremble with fear at the valor of this youth, endowed with the speed of thought. It is a wonder how his energy and spirit grow every minute. How can I get the better of him if I deal with him in a spirit of carelessness? So there is no other goal for me but to slay this poor boy. No one can afford to ignore a fire that grows and grows every moment. Thus did he read aright the strength and might of his foe. He decided within himself the course he was to adopt. He set his heart upon the death of the Rakshasa. 8 horses were yoked to his car, strong, fleet as the wind, trained to various evolutions. They bore the huge car so lightly. Maruti decided to deprive the youth of his car as a first step. Stationing himself overhead in the sky, he killed them with frightful blows of his hands. The once beautiful car fell to the earth, a shapeless mass, its axles broken to bits, the flags torn to pieces, and the horses a thing of the past. Then Aksha, the most redoubtable of warriors, leapt lightly from it and sprang into the sky with his bow and sword. They gave one the idea of a sage who lays by his house of flesh and through the power of yoga makes his way to the worlds of God in his form of light. The son of Vayu, endowed with the prowess of his father, ranged in the sky that was the home of his parent and of the Lord Garuda. Without the slightest shadow of fear troubling his heart, did his foe rush at him. Maruti watched his opportunity, drew near him, and grasping at his feet, whirled him round and round with frightful speed, even as Garuda plays with his serpents, and dashed him against the earth and ground him to atoms, as it were. He cast down the shapeless ball of flesh, arms, shoulders, thighs, loins, neck. All were shattered to bits. The joints were broken, and blood flowed in torrents from the huge carcass. And thus did Aksha, the beloved son of Ravana, breathe his last on the bosom of Mother Earth. Thus did Hanuman break him to pieces and grind him to dust, and thus he caused the proud heart of Ravana to know trouble and grief. The great sages, planetary rulers, the holy men of stern vows, the Bhutas, the Yakshas, Pannagas, the gods, and the ruler, the Lord Indra, stood in speechless wonder as they gazed at Anjaneya with eyes that forgot to wink. Aksha, with eyes red as blood and radiant even as Jayanta, the son of Indra, was thus laid low by Maruti, who with unabated enthusiasm and energy took his place over the gate, like unto the Lord of Death, ruling over the day of dissolution. Mangalam Koslendraya Mahaniya Gunavati Chakravarti Dhanurjaya Sarvabhaumaya Mangalam.